Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 National ORCOR meeting. We're so glad that you're here. I was reflecting on how just a year ago we were all in St. Louis and we were able to meet and gather together, and this is just a really different experience. However, we are able to bring in more people, so I'm hoping this meeting will be very meaningful to you right now today. So today's meeting is pretty tight. We have a lot to cover. Sorry. So sorry. My little mouse is a little on the fast, touchy side. I'll give you some brief updates. Dr. Elliott will give you some updates, and then the associations have very generously taken time to record their updates, which is wonderful because then it will be on the website for you to access anytime you want. Drs. Glover and Quiroz will provide the keynote. I'm very excited about that, and then we'll close up. I'll be your timekeeper today, and apologies if I'm fairly strict. As you can see, it's pretty tight. I hope that you'll feel comfortable emailing each other afterwards for follow-up questions and other ideas. I also wanted to update you. The steering committee has been very busy this year planning and putting on webinars, looking over our guidelines. We did make some changes to the bylaws, which include increasing the number up to 6 for the main reason of having an immediate past chair to support the current chair and identifying a person as a recorder. This year, your new chair is Dr. Crystal Glover from Rush ADC. Thank you so much, Crystal, for taking this on. I will be there to support her as the immediate past chair. Drs. Rentz and Roberts are valuable people on the committee and have been consistently available, helpful, and will, continue. So thank you both. Unfortunately, Dr. Quiroz will be leaving us. She's been on the committee for a year, and I very much appreciate all your effort, especially this keynote today, as well as your just ongoing engagement and willingness to help over the course of the year. I will miss you. New to the committee, Corinne Pettigrew and Laura Baker, thank you both for joining us. I know that you're really looking forward to getting a bunch of doodle polls and emails, so welcome. I also want to extend my thanks to the NIA teams, Drs. Elliott and Silverberg. You've been instrumental to helping us move forward and enthusiastic, and I can't thank you enough. And then Elizabeth, your time on this project I know has been enormous, and thank you for all you do. Over the last year, we had one video webinar that Dr. Rentz did. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful engagement of all the leaders about what they're doing in this time of COVID. They did record it like they're recording today, and there's the YouTube address, so go ahead and access that. It is on the website now. I obviously got it from there, and it's a great program, so please look into that. Other announcements: the Emory Roybal Center for Dementia Caregiving Mastery has RFA out for letters of intent. I know you can't read all this, but here's the email. Go ahead and email Ken Hepburn. I'm sure he'd love to tell you more about it. If you have announcements, feel free to get in touch with me or Elizabeth Robichaud, and we'll make sure that those announcements get out. We want to make sure that everybody knows what the opportunities are. Coming up on October 23rd, Dr. Lindauer and I will be presenting a talk about what makes a strong ORCOR. Dr. Elliott and Drs. Karlowicz and Edwards will also be on that webinar. As you recall, there was a survey earlier this year in which we talked about, what is important to you. The most important was talking about support and recruitment of Latino families. This one was the second one. And thus, today's keynote is about working with Latino families by Drs. Quiroz and Glover. So now I am going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Elliott. I have a timer, so when you hear the beep, you'll know that we have a couple of minutes left. And again, thank you so much for being here today. And is Cerise ready? Oop, there's your timer. Let's see. Elizabeth, do you know if Cerise is ready today?
Yeah, I'm looking for her.
Okay.
Let me investigate.
Sure. And I'll tell you what I'll do while we're doing that. I will go ahead and give you the updates from the associations. The first one is by Dr. Carl Hill, and he has, each association was asked to give a 5-minute presentation. He, as an overachiever, he did 12 minutes, so apologies, I'm going to cut him off at 5 minutes. But again, this will be on the website for you to access. So I'll get that up.
I believe Cerise is with us.
Oh, great.
Elizabeth,
Go ahead. Hi,
Elizabeth,
Yep.
I can't share my screen. Can you promote me?
I will see what I can do. You should
All
have
right.
presenter. Let's see. Okay, now.
Hi, Cerise. Welcome. Thank you.
Now I'm special. Okay.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
always special. Are you kidding? And I'll have the timer, but you have a nice 15 minutes, and we're eager to hear from you about what's going on.
Yeah, no problem. Hello, Core leaders. I'm giving, wait, is my camera on?
Yes.
Wait,
We
like,
see
you
your
see my face?
Slides. We see your
Not my face?
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm gonna work on my face. Hold on. There we go. Hello.
We gotcha. Yay.
Okay, so I wanted everyone to give everyone a virtual hug. I'm sorry, I miss hanging out with my Core people, and I'm glad that everyone is together. I just have a few slides, a few remarks to talk about, you know, this whole virtualness that we have. We have lots of people online, and so I could just kind of start from the beginning and discuss, you know, what in having the outreach and recruitment engagement core, what our goals are, and these goals are outlined in the RFA. And so, you know, we really find that the core is the important liaison between the ADRC and the people with dementia, caregivers, and the professionals and the lay community, that you're gonna have this central role in the community and being a community resource for the ADs and related dementias. So when, you know, people do kind of get on our radar and ask for information and help with loved ones with AD, we immediately think of all of our centers, and we immediately think of all of our core leaders and the resources that you have. I think a third thing that we find very important in the core is that there is an assessment of all this outreach, engagement, and recruitment and retention, and that each center is going to have unique needs, and each institutions are going to have unique needs, and your geographical area in which you are serving are going to have unique needs. And we really would, you know, like to see evidence of need assessments and kind of evaluation of all of your programs and things like that. And so when that happens, you know, we're all sharing all of our best practices and all of our trials and tribulations. And I think we could work together using the steering committee as a way to make sure that we're maximizing the way that we communicate our successes and our failures and our improvements. Allison's gone through all of the new committee members, but I just wanted to kind of start our day, like each core kind of has a steering committee, and we're all kind of looking for all of the cores to work through their steering committees to communicate to NIA of what your needs and resources are needed, and what goals we can attempt together as a large network. You know from in 2017 that we totally had a review panel, and we have a list of recommendations. In collaboration with NACC, we've put together, we've gone through and reviewed all the duties for each of the steering committees. NACC manages the steering committees. We asked that the chairs work with NACC and NIA and the committee and all the cores to achieve 1 to 3 major goals during their term. There's a term of office, there's an election process, and we want this to be kind of the central hub of future planning and communicating to us what your needs are collectively, because I think collectively there are needs that we all have. And one of the goals that is going to be tapped for the new panel is to review the ORCOR recommendations and try to pick a major goal for the 2021. One major goal that we worked really hard as a group to publish is Together We Make a Difference, which is our national strategy for recruitment and participation in ADRD research. And we had like really broad goals to engage broad segments of the public and focus on underrepresented communities, and to assist other studies to quickly enrolling and retaining people. And I think that after 2 years, I think we still have lots of this document to assess and determine, how well the ORCORs fit within this national strategy, and how the ORCORs can take a lead into executing some of these goals. So I wanted to remind everyone of that. One thing that also started after the national strategy is ADOR, and you guys have been really great in helping us fill ADOR with all of the outreach, recruitment, and engagement resources. And I think there are still people within your institutions and in your centers that don't know about this resource. Whether they're not staff in your center, but maybe they're in other departments and they're doing Alzheimer's disease research. I've heard some things that they didn't know where to look, and so I hope that everyone knows that you can find flyers, toolkits, recruitment plans, and a large majority of that came from each and every one of you. And but there are also other NIH resources and resources from other agencies and organizations. And there's a submit link there that you can contribute any of the new resources that you're making. One of the new resources that OCPL has worked on is a new section for disclosure protocols, and that's available. So if you have any questions or comments about ADOR, you can use that email right there. And then, COVID has given us a lot of opportunity to get together and coalesce, and there's many things that ORCORs have done. In April, as soon as everyone kind of realized that, there is no clinic and everyone's gonna be home alone and there's home orders, you guys used listservs really well and got like straight back to COVID-19, and there was some sharing about caregiver messages and how to kind of collectively help caregivers in this time of need. Also through the listservs, I don't know what to do with that, Nita, but she's giving me another message. Hopefully you can still hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So in September, NIA has provided you updates on ADR, and there are new and updated publications. There are new resources always on a regular cycle into the repository. There is a new project announcements that we updated our Spanish health website, and that's available to your participants and to every one of you. And as Allison mentioned, we rallied and had a webinar about all the efforts that you were doing for COVID, and I thought that was a great sharing opportunity, and people learned what each region was doing on COVID. We have today's meeting, which I look forward to, and I'm very excited. And then the webinar that we're planning on the 23rd. So I think that using the technologies that we have, I think that, you know, we're starting to kind of come together and think about all the tasks and duties that, you know, ORCORs can lead upon. So great. Another thing that has happened recently is that the WashU group has published their meeting summary report from the meeting in St. Louis that happened in 2018. And the link is available for you there. And I hope that you go and read the article and the summary. I think there's still a lot of opportunity to take from what that meeting and what occurred at that meeting, what was discussed at that meeting, to do some actions on. And with NACC, we created a interest group that's listed there, and hopefully you can make it active. And there's some volunteers that could, you know, do something, especially, you know, in the time that we're living, to help out with some new opportunities for African-American recruitment. We also have a Latino ADC special interest group, and the co-leads are Yakeel and Quiroz and Katia Roskovsky. And over the past few months, they've helped us with Spanish translation and adaptation of the UDST COG, COVID and technology surveys. They did the norms for the Spanish UDS, which is still ongoing. And they've done some outreach and caregiver, and they have like a central repository work group as well. And they're working with Holly in our Division of Extramural Activities office to do listening and focus groups on recruitment and retention of Latino populations, and consulted on Spanish translation with OCPL. And so we're very thankful to this special interest group and all the work that they are doing to make sure that Latinos and Hispanics are, you know, being outreached in an equitable way. You can follow them on Twitter, because, you know, Twitter is cool. So if you're not on Twitter yet, you know, you could follow them. Brand new, just yesterday, the NIA and the OCPL team released a brain donation social media kit, and the website is available, so you can do social media images, nice formatted things that you can easily share in your Twitter channels, educational flyers, a brain donation infographic, and a newsletter article. So hopefully you could use these kit for your participants. So I just want to close to discuss, you know, what we could probably do in 2021. I feel like, you know, the ORCOR recommendations were really, you know, like that what do you call that? That low-hanging fruit, that some recommendations are kind of already written, and there still needs to be assessment of what is possible and what may not be possible, and what needs are needed and what we kind of already have. So I think that would be a great task for the steering committee next year. I think we could work on some collective engagement. I think there's lots of things that we're kind of doing in silos that, you know, perhaps we can come together and make it happen across all the centers, and some come through with some sort of national effort on outreach, recruitment, and retention. And, you know, we kind of, again, started that in 2018 with the national strategy. And so, again, there's lots of ideas out there. And now we have to kind of evaluate the feasibility of executing one of them or so. But I think NACC is really central into helping us organize ourselves. And there's different methods, the webinars. I know Zoom fatigue is real. So, you know, there's meeting summaries. As the ORCOR meets in the next year, they can provide written summaries for you about what they discussed, what they deliberated. And of course, the survey mechanism is always like, we want your thoughts, and surveying kind of goes back and forth. You know, I'm always a proponent of Slack. So there's some links there that you could do Slack. There's an ORCOR channel that only has about 20 people. So you can go and join the ORCOR channel. And then that's kind of the new fancy way, but then there's also the listservs for the ORCOR that I know, I think Slack kind of gives the opportunity to get off your email and get into like a real collaborative space that's separate from like your email work. So that's kind of my presentation, and I thank you for your time, and I thank you for all the challenges you've overcome, and, you know, switching to remote assessment and switching to community engagement on COVID and checking in on all of your participants. So I'm going to end it here and say thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Cerise. There's so much work still to be done. So I look forward to next year. Now we're going to move on.
You didn't sound that excited, Allison. Next year, yay!
I am excited. So now we're going to hear from the associations, and what a great group of people that helped me out. The Alzheimer's Association, the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, and the Lewy Body Dementia Association. Great teamwork, and they recorded their presentations, and I'm going to give them to you now. Carl Hill from the Alzheimer's Association, it's been extremely supportive of us, and as you recall, last year we had a great cocktail party put on by the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm sorry we're not doing that now, but maybe next year. He's so helpful, and I love his engagement, and I asked for a 5-minute slide and he gave me a 12 minutes. So we're just going to do 5. I'm going to cut him off at 5, and then it'll be on the website for you. I'm going ahead and share my screen and my recording. If you guys don't hear it, could somebody just give me a shout out? I'd appreciate that. Give me just a minute though to get it running. Okay, here we go.
Excited to give this update during the ORCOR meeting. My name is Carl Hill, Vice President for Scientific Engagement with the Alzheimer's Association, and really taking this over from Dr. Keith Fargo, who has left the Alzheimer's Association. We certainly wish him well. Just a reminder, the Alzheimer's Association is a global organization working to advance care, support, and research across the world. Research is probably the most important factor to this meeting. Just a month ago, we had a fantastic Alzheimer's Association International Conference, which we held virtually because of COVID-19. And we had just a tremendous response from the scientific community, over 33,000 attendees representing 163 countries, the world's largest forum to advance dementia science. And we had a chance to discuss tremendous gains that have been made in understanding the basic biology underlying Alzheimer's, how brain cells work and what goes wrong in Alzheimer's, lifestyle factors, recruitment and retention. Just a number of great avenues were on display virtually, and it was free of charge. So the scientific community had a great benefit from participating in AAIC. Some of the research that was presented there explored the relationship between vaccinations and and dementia. Now, one study found that a single flu shot was associated with a 17% lower prevalence of Alzheimer's, or another study that was discussed on a panel session during AIC found that for people between 65 and 75, a pneumonia vaccine reduced their risk by up to 40%. So, still much more to understand about this relationship. There are factors like quality, access to quality of healthcare, or where people live, place matters. So early days for this research, but it really shows that public health, access to quality public health has some implications for dementia risk over the life course. So more to understand. There was also just some, really interesting discussions around aducanumab from Biogen. Many of us here in this meeting know that the FDA announced that it would review aducanumab, which is an anti-amyloid antibody, really addressing the underlying causes of Alzheimer's. So this is under priority review, and there was some discussion around the meaning of that review and being sure that if approved, everyone that needs access would have equitable access. So great discussions during AAIC about that. Another great panel session focused on blood biomarkers and tau specifically. So there was some research that suggests that a form of tau called p-tau217 is a very specific to Alzheimer's, and when measured in the blood, is highly accurate in distinguishing Alzheimer's from other neurodegenerative disorders. So, this is still, early in the research process, but we know blood tests are easier to administer and more accessible than current methods of evaluating Alzheimer's. And blood markers are important because it gives us a chance to identify appropriate people for clinical trials, or to understand stage of disease, and certainly differentiating Alzheimer's from other dementia. So we're hoping that this field continues to move forward, but just some exciting work presented during AAIC about blood biomarkers that include tau. There was also some very interesting discussion from the Lancet Commission, which added 3 additional modifiable risk factors to their list of 9: air pollution, traumatic brain injury, and excessive alcohol use. So, these authors and Gil Livingstone published the paper. If you want to go to the literature, but these authors state that up to 40% of worldwide dementia cases might be prevented because of some of these modifiable risk factors. So while we wait for a rigorous review from FDA, there is research that's identifying things that we can do, right, to reduce risk for Alzheimer's over the life course, which I think presents just some terrific opportunities for additional research to understand the more specific recipe of modifiable risk factors, or even lifestyle factors. To that end, there was some research that explored.
I'm going to stop now, and I love the presentation, but I do have to move on. And now the LBDA will be presenting their video.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to share some ways LBDA is here as a resource for the ADC program. We'll start by exploring how we can work together on Lewy body dementia awareness, education, and support. You may already be familiar that there's a new documentary out called Robin's Wish, which tells for the first time what Robin Williams was experiencing from undiagnosed Lewy body dementia in the years preceding his death. Well, LBDA is really excited to be able to offer you exclusive access to a modified version of the film that goes into greater detail about the disease. This version has been developed to support in-person or virtual community outreach events, healthcare professional education, and even college courses. We're planning a preview showing for academic center staff who may be interested in using it for educational purposes. The preview event is on Thursday, October 29th at 1 p.m. So if you would like an invitation to attend and have not received our save the date notice, please reach out to me and we'll be sure to get you one. We would be delighted to work with ADC centers on educational resources specific to LBD. And in fact, I wanted to share that the NIH booklet on LBD was a 3-year collaboration between UCSD, LBDA, and NIH. We'd really love to work with you to develop some new materials and share them with the world. LBDA hosts a handful of webinars every year, rotating the focus for those living with the disease, the family caregiver, and for healthcare professionals. Right now, we're working on one with our Research Centers of Excellence program on virtual LBD clinical assessments. And thanks to an unrestricted educational grant from Acadia, we're collaborating with Medscape now on a series of CMEs on LBD. Our support services are delivered by our staff and LBDA-trained LBD caregivers and professionals in the field. Programs include support groups running on Facebook, Zoom, and of course in the community before the pandemic. And we can also link caregivers to peer-to-peer support through our Louie line. Shifting over to research, I'm going to highlight a few opportunities where we might work together, including how to support your recruitment needs and engage LBD stakeholders. LBDA has 26 research centers of excellence, many of which are also part of the ADC program. Our aim is to build this network into a clinical trials ready network, and we are collaborating with investigators and with industry and putting together grant proposals to NIH and are starting to engage the FDA as well. In addition to clinical trials, we work with individual researchers on projects to address unmet needs of the LBD community. For example, we worked with Melissa Armstrong from the University of Florida on a pilot study exploring caregivers' experience at the end of life in DLB. And we're happy to say we are now also collaborating with her on her newly funded R01 to study a cohort of DLB patient and caregiver dyads at the end of life in DLB. This year, we also launched a working group to explore the issues around suicidality in LBD. This group has submitted a manuscript on the possible contributing factors and is moving on to case report series. So if this is an area of particular interest to you, please reach out to me. We'd be happy to include you in the group. LBDA is playing a central role in assisting with recruitment for LBD clinical studies. So if you're interested in working with LBDA as a collaborator for recruitment purposes, or if you have an LBD study already funded and you would like to have it included on our site, please let us know. And to close out today, we are committed to patient and caregiver engagement in research. Our staff and volunteers actively participate in stakeholder committees, discussion panels, study advisory committees, and working groups. And so I've put my contact information here on the screen for you. Please do reach out to us and let us know how we can support the work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Denny, Senior Director of Programs at the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. AFTD is the national advocacy organization for people living with frontotemporal degeneration disorders and their families. We work every day to advance research, awareness, support, education, and advocacy. Among AFTD's highest priorities is to advance early and accurate diagnosis and the development of treatments. We invest strategically and leverage available dollars for maximum impact through robust collaborative partnerships. Key initiatives this year include a $1.2 million award to the Bluefield Project to cure FTD through the Diagnostics Accelerator Program. This program is a partnership between AFTD and the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation to fast-track the development of diagnostic tests and biomarkers. In the second round of awards of our multi-year FTD Biomarkers Initiative, AFTD funded a 3-year, $1.1 million study investigating neuroinflammation in neurodegenerative diseases. A new collaboration between AFTD and Target ALS invested $5 million to fund 6 research partnerships across biotech, pharma, and academia. Treat FTD is a $10 million grant-making initiative between AFTD and ADDF to bring both novel and repurposed treatments into clinical testing for FTD and related disorders. 2 awards were made in this program in the last year. And since 2005, AFTD has supported early career investigators through a postdoctoral fellowship program and pilot grants. Today is the deadline for the 2020 Wellbeing and FTD Pilot Grant Program, and the deadline for the 2020 Basic Science Pilot Grant Program is October 9th. Advancing quality care and support is at the heart of our mission, and we're reaching a growing number of people each year. In 2019, our helpline responded to a record 2,546 calls and emails, each answered by our trained staff. There are now 105 AFTD support group volunteers who lead local groups in 36 states across the country. An additional 7 national virtual-only groups provide support to people with specialized caregiving needs. Our Comstock grant program provides financial assistance to care partners and persons diagnosed. Last year, 164 care partners received grants for respite. 85 people living with FTD received quality of life grants through this unique program that awards funds for goods or services that they would not otherwise be able to afford. People with FTD have always needed champions, and that increased notably in March due to the coronavirus pandemic. FTD symptoms often make following hygiene or social distancing guidelines difficult. Disrupted routines make behavioral symptoms more problematic, and restricted visiting in long-term care facilities made advocating for care even more challenging. In March, AFTD began to publish guidance from FTD experts and has established a special section on our website on COVID-19 related topics. Our annual education conference was canceled and content delivered through a series of 5 online events during April and May. We helped AFTD support group volunteers transition their local groups to meet remotely in a secure and reliable way. Like many people, we now see new possibilities in the wider acceptance of these platforms for sharing support and resources. We expanded the approved use of the Comstock respite grants and increased the quality of life grants for this year from 80 to 130. And we continue to promote an important new resource published right before the pandemic hit. Walking with Grief, Loss, and the FTD Journey addresses the experience of loss throughout the disease and is available online and in print. AFTD is in a unique position to bring FTD care and cure together. And as new therapeutics begin to enter clinical trials, it's more important than ever that we continue to build an informed, engaged community. To this end, we're developing a series of deep dive educational webinars on the genetics of FTD. Because roughly 40% of FTD is familial, people want and need accurate information to understand their potential risk and their research opportunities. In March of 2021, AFTD will host a patient-focused drug development meeting with the FDA. This meeting will feature people with FTD and their caregivers speaking about the impact of the disease and what they will be looking for in a treatment. We continue to partner with the FTD Disorders Registry, using the strength and competency of both organizations to improve educational outreach to the community to prepare for emerging clinical trials. And we're very grateful to partner with researchers leading the All FTD Consortium. This pivotal multi-year $63 million NIH-funded grant program allows researchers at 19 centers to work collaboratively in this disease. We know that with a strong community and committed partners, together, we are building a future free of FTD. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And again, thank you to the organizations for taking the time to do those recordings. They will be on your website, on the NACC website. And of course, I'm sure they would appreciate it if you would reach out to them with any questions or concerns. Next, we have our keynote speakers, Crystal Glover and Yakeel Quiroz. We have lots of time. We'll have some time for Q&A, and just let me know if there's anything I could do on my end, but I'll let you two take it away.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay and see the slides?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Good. All right. Hello, so I'm Crystal Glover. I am the OR leader at the Rush ADC and also the incoming OR chair. And so it's great to be with you guys today. And I really feel, I wish we could all be together, but I understand that we have to do it this way. And it's just something about not being able to see one another face to face that really takes it away there. However, let's get started with this today. So I'm talking about the engaged model. Is a model that we use at, give me 1 second, guys. I'm having a few technical difficulties. All right, just a few difficulties there. Okay, I think we're okay now. One of the downsides of doing this by yourself without tech support. So today I'm focusing on our research efforts, especially at the Rush ADC with Latino communities before COVID-19 and also what we're doing now during COVID-19. So I cannot start this presentation without especially acknowledgments for NIA, Allison, of course, all of my friends and colleagues at the ranch, at the Rush ADC, but especially Dave Marquez, who leads our Latino Core, as well as all of the staff with our OR and Latino cores, and all of our research participants, community members who are engaged in research. So one of the overall goals that we guide with at the Rush ADC is being able to cultivate not only inclusive, but very engaged and active participation in research, ADRD research by diverse persons. So those are people underrepresented and understudied in research with a particular focus with older Latinos. So the focus here is we know there are more older adults, so the number of older adults is growing in the United States, and one of the largest subgroups is older Latinos. So we're expected to see an increase almost 3 times from where we are in 2017 to 2050. And we do know that this is a very diverse group. So there's 33 different subgroups, the largest being Mexican, Puerto Rican, and Cuban. But not only, they vary in their cultural practices, their race, meaning Latinos can be Black, white, Asian, speak Spanish, English, Portuguese, different dialects, and also have different immigration experiences. Born in the United States, not, or immigrating. So these are great groups for diversity. And we have in Illinois the 7th largest population of older Latinos in the United States. And they're concentrated mostly around Chicagoland. While that population is growing, older Latinos, we're also expecting that ADRD in older Latinos is projected to increase by more than 800% by the year 2060. So as we're looking to have individuals grow in population, they're also growing in potential for illness. So that's why it was very important to us to have a Latino Core, a core specifically focused on diverse older Latino communities at the Rush ADC to really capitalize on, one, being able to have such a large group, a diverse group of Latinos across the Chicagoland area. We focus on individuals who are 60 years of age and older without a dementia diagnosis, as well as being open to having biospecimens taken. And with Latino Core, you have the option of brain donation. It is not a requirement, but it is an option. It's a key feature of us, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So a lot of times we're faced with questions about why a Latino Core, and my basic inclination and from the literature and experience is that ADRD studies with older non-Latino whites simply may not apply. So older Latinos face potentially distinctive risk factors for ADRD, such as structural assimilation, but also specific resilience and coping factors around their reliance on family, their relationships, culture, and religion. And so it's my orientation to take that minority health or health equity lens to say, what are the potential causes or risk factors and ways that we can reduce risk specific to older Latinos. So focusing on intra-ethnic diversity here versus comparisons between various groups. While that remains important, I believe we have to understand the group and the heterogeneity within before we can then start making comparisons. And I think that's what Latino Core really serves here. So with us at the Core, we take this engaged approach. Last year, I talked about the engage model. So they'll just look to the right for me. It's 1 through 4 on the outside. This is our general approach to outreach, recruitment, and engagement. So briefly, we start with networking with different Latino groups and stakeholders that have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, but also serving older Latinos. Then we build that relationship to understand, what do you need? What are your especially needs that could be met via research, service, and healthcare? And then we start saying, is it literature that we can have disseminate to you, give talks? We do very well with health fairs, memory screenings, and other health screenings. Then we make the pitch for advocating for research. Once we understand where people are in their communities, the older Latinos, their needs, their views, then we say, here's a talk, here's literature regarding the utility of research, but specifically the utility of research for your community, the Latino community. And then all of that information we give back. If people decide not to take part in a study, to take part in a study, it doesn't matter. Everyone that we network with or gave first to, we give information back. What are we finding with Latino Core? All the Rush ADC studies, the NIH supported studies that we're affiliated with, exactly what are we finding? So they could take that information back and be able to incorporate it and share it with their friends, family, church members, so we can really facilitate health equity from the ground up. So we're simply conduits for that, or assisting and partnering with older Latino communities, okay? But 2 things, and at the heart here is evaluate. So we're always evaluating these efforts, okay? Well, something that was new, and we'll talk a little bit about the data, what we've been doing over the past year is around the concepts of design and develop. So if you look at the circle to the right, you'll see 1 through 4, of course, and inside always evaluating. But these number 6, design and develop, is increasingly important to me as a mixed methodologist to be able to use qualitative and design science methodologies to not only have inclusive and engaged participation, but what we term active participation. Meaning, it's almost like a co-design of research. So with qualitative work, focus groups and such, we can understand and identify different participant perspectives around novel topics, sensitive topics such as brain donation. But with design innovation, so design studios, we can strategize around that. So say with our qualitative focus groups, we may understand or develop, say, what are perspectives on brain donation, but with our design innovation, we can develop strategies to disseminate or improve our brain donation strategies, co-design with older Latinos. So specific to Latinos with our engaged efforts, everything at the Rush ADC is a team-based approach. And I mean diverse demographic and professional. So we have those who are bilingual, different racial, ethnic, religion, sexual orientation groups, but also different professionals. So we have community specialists, of course, we have coordinators, we have communication experts. So it's a full team approach to really understand what are the needs, the thoughts, and also in relationship to research of older Latinos. But something that's always been embedded as something we promote explicitly now is cultural competence, because we know that the world we live in, implicit, explicit biases are all around us. It can't help but to seep into each one of us. And we want to make sure that we do 2 things: that we learn and appreciate the lived experiences of participants. So not just in relationship to ADRD specifically, but the full experience of aging and healthy aging, okay? but then also learning and understanding historical knowledge related to diverse Latino communities. And here we've been able to distill it to several shared or common values, such as politeness and respect for your family, especially around head of household, male head of households. But also, before researchers really start getting into the nitty-gritty, develop a relationship. So these are things that we've noticed as sort of the foundation or bedrock when we engage with older Latinos. Some of the key things here that we're very proud of and we've shared with ADOR and developed in conjunction with NIA and other groups are the bilingual and shareable products that we have. So this is always in print, always the rage, and I just wanted to share some screenshots of these materials for you. And I'm happy to share if you would like hard copies of these or print copies. So, as I said earlier, that I wanted to talk about our efforts, at least within the past year, and we're sort of phasing into that. To my left, or to your left, would be our engaged activities just since July of last year, leading to more recently now, August 31st. And you know, COVID came almost smack dab in the middle. But here we still notice that we're able to have among older Latinos being able especially to give first. So these networking relationships growing more into partnerships to be able to say, how can we meet the needs identified in older Latino communities? But also that great number of 36% of advocating for research. So these relationships are nicely maturing into, say, networking, to giving first, to advocating for research. And our Latino Core, which is really the driver of a lot of our older Latino participation, started in 2015, I believe. So we're not quite yet at the give back stage, but we're getting there. And even to the right with COVID-19, just in the past year, we've been able to recruit 40 older Latinos into the Latino Core. So that's been really exciting that we can keep this going, even in the middle of a pandemic, which has been quite an incredible feat for the team. So kudos to that. But then right in the middle of this, so late last year after we spoke at OR, and I highlighted the engage model, I started conceptualizing what would a focus on Latino communities be with design and develop. Because even though overall, and that's what we do as scientists, we have group-based or population-based understanding, that they're shared and common values, of course, but there are other factors that are impacting older Latinos. So we were shifting that focus explicitly so to focus on participant perspectives. So really understanding individual perspectives. So that includes their backgrounds, of course, being in the United States, immigration, just their lives in general in terms of healthy aging, but not only challenges and barriers, so what they're up against or facing or what they view as challenges, especially in relation to cognitive aging and ADRD, but what are some current resilience and coping mechanisms. So it became explicitly important for us to think about the participant perspective, but then also a focus on strengths as well as challenges to bring them together for a more holistic approach. And since we are researchers, really thinking about how the background, the resilience, the challenges, how do all of those things come together to speak to research and related experiences. People are working with us. You know, we are partnering with Latino communities, Latino participants in our studies. How does their background interface with their views on research, what we're looking at, our priorities, and their related experiences? That was very much so important. Nowhere was this more important, I would say, over the past maybe year or so, 18 months, was around brain donation. So I introduced a mixed method study that I'll tell a little bit more about to really address what I was seeing as low Latino participation in brain donation, despite our persistent efforts, continuous persistent efforts with the team, that we just didn't have a lot of Latinos who agreed to brain donation, and that's fine. But then we saw that even amongst older Latinos who did agree, that they had lower rates of completed brain autopsies. So took that view of being out in the field myself and took it to the literature to make sure that we're seeing similar things, talking to other ADC members. And we're seeing that there's a limited availability of brain tissue from older Latinos, which means that severely limits not only our understanding of ADRD in older Latinos, but just our understanding overall of ADRD. And that just presents a major challenge, in my view, for the future of ADRD research. To give you a little flavor, I'm showing you data from the 5 Rush ADC cohort studies, because we have 4 others in along with Latino Core. I really try to get away from the comparisons, so I want to speak just directly to Latinos and then give you a little context. Overall, we have 444 who have consented to a study. Of those, we have 267 who have agreed to brain donation. So a lot of folks are still alive, which is great, okay? But of those deceased, we have a batting average of about 73% with completed brain autopsies. Now that's great if we're looking at it just this slide, but if we were to contextualize it with older whites or older non-Latino whites, the number there is, our batting average is 90%, but that 90% is 1,600 individuals, or brain tissue from 1,600 decedents. So 90% and 73% in terms of completed brain autopsies may not sound that different, but in terms of quantitative or specific numbers, you're having about 1,600 non-Latino whites compared to 48 Latinos. So even though we do pretty well as a group, overall as a field, there's a little bit of a dearth there, okay? So that led me to what I call the HERD study, the Health Equity Through Aging Research, and it was a discussion, yes, HERD study. I'm more than open to talking about the particulars of this work, but I really want, in the time I have, to get to the basic findings with older Latinos. So I really was looking at what are the barriers and facilitators of agreeing to brain donation among older Latinos. So it's very important to me, after looking at the previous literature, to say, what are barriers among older Latinos who have said, no, I don't want to do this, and facilitators among older Latinos who have said yes. And when I say yes, that means that they have signed the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. So that means that they have decided to donate their brains upon death to clinical ADRD research, all right? So I wanted to be very specific in my design, with barriers from those who said no and facilitators from those who said yes. But what we see here is something very elegant, is that the role of family served as both a barrier and a facilitator. So for the barrier side, so people who said no to brain donation, they just didn't have a general family buy-in. Their family members were just not with this. They did not agree with this. They saw as a whole that their culture and such and their family were blended, meaning their religious beliefs and also the male-centered approval, their husband or eldest son. If they're not okay with this, then this cannot happen. But also family members were really concerned about what did this mean in terms of their religious beliefs, okay? But conversely, with those who said yes, they also spoke of family. They really want to give back, especially to avoid the sadness, they said, that they've experienced when they've taken care of a loved one with ADRD, or experienced or witnessed a loved one or friend go through ADRD, and they really thought that brain donation and the understandings that we can have from this, brain autopsies, can benefit their families and the broader Latino communities. So that role of family and culture was embedded in both sides there. So I became fascinated midway with, okay, if you said yes to brain donation, which is great, why don't we take this opportunity to understand what are some perceived impediments that may occur for completed brain autopsies? So remember, my slide here is people who have donated, okay, or consented, agreed to donate, all right? To your right, those people have said yes to brain donation. But we know that even if you say yes or consent, that it's lower rates of completed brain autopsies because they can't bring themselves for the autopsy. It has to be someone else. So I wanted to dig deep into what participants, older Latinos who agreed to brain donation, what did they think or anticipate as a reason for their wishes, their brain donation wishes not being carried out. And they identified very straight away was lack of family follow through. Even if participant family members were okay with their brain donation decision and supported it, they had severe misgivings that the brain donation process would get in the way of their grieving, of course, and their internment procedures or processes. And they just may not want to deal with that. And they said they were really worried about family members being able to follow through. So in a recent paper that was accepted, we set forth different recommendations or potential ways to address this issue. And some of this was really thinking of family as participant. So starting from when an individual decides to sign the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, having family engagement there. What does research participation even mean? What does brain donation mean to research? How are the two linked? How does organ donation, say on your license, differ from brain donation for clinical ADRD research? And then also how the process of brain autopsy will not interfere with your internment plans, even if participants would like a traditional internment with open casket. So really just being explicit about these things with especially the older children or children of older adults. So to that end, Dave Marquez, the leader of Latino Core, and other folks at the Rush ADC, we asked adult children of older Latinos to get that other side of what would you like to see from if you were to hear that your loved one, your parent is looking to agree to brain donation, what would you want to hear? And that's exactly, triangulation here occurred that it's just a lack of knowledge or information about how does this differ from what's on the license to brain donation? What is the process? So how do we even donate? Who do we call once, say, someone passes away? And what is the exact process of brain donation? And then really, how does this serve me? To the right, you'll see what are the benefits of brain donation, raising that and having a specific family-based approach. Okay? So we have current strategies in place, of course. We're continuing to develop the strategies that we've learned through the qualitative research over, I think all of this took place over the past 18 months or so, 18 months. That's kind of linear way here. But we also provide a packet to every older Latino who has agreed to brain donation and their family members. In the packet is information for Dr. Marquez, who to call at the Rush ADC once someone passes away, a sheet of FAQs, frequently asked questions. We do the sensitive job of asking for funeral home information. So we can really send informational letters to funeral home directors to say, hey, there's a person, an older Latino who is taking part with the Rush ADC, and they have signed the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act to ensure smooth transitions here so we don't interfere with the grieving process of the family members. But we also discuss brain donation for those who are not opposed. If someone says, I don't want to talk about this, as we see that is their right, that's fine. But if people are lukewarm or on the fence, our team has a wonderful way of gussing that out and being able to still broach those topics with individuals being bolstered by the information we've learned from qualitative research. So what we're looking to do through our OR and other efforts is continue our retention and other outreach efforts. So we have quarterly cafecitos. Cafecitos, just a small group, say about 30 people, participants, but if they want to bring a loved one or a social network member, they can bring those individuals. And that we have a professional bilingual to talk about issues that they would like to speak about: mental health, diet, exercise, ADRD, and just really fostering that flow of information and meeting the needs here, but also not just focusing on ADRD, but all the things that can influence or impact healthy aging and ADRD. And we do this with our team that continues to grow, and we continue to address that need for bilingual staff. Of course, everyone who interfaces with older Latinos is. but also bicultural and playing around with the idea of matching race and ethnicity here. But nevertheless, having that cultural competence lens in all of our team, our researchers, teams, etc. We do all of this community-based, of course, and even now, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But two things going into the future that we're really focused on is increasing our efforts with older Latino men. Right now, we have a lot of older Latino women who participate, and that is true across most diverse populations. It's very top-heavy with women. So we want to increase our efforts with older Latino men, but also with diverse Latinos. Throughout the Chicagoland area, we have interaction with a lot of older Latinos who are Mexican and Puerto Rican. So we really want to get out there and reach out to Cuban, Venezuelan, and other groups to really get that heterogeneity for diverse Latinos. So while all of this was happening, COVID-19 became prevalent in our world, and we did a partial pivot. Is what I've been terming as research as service, because we were seeing older adults, particularly older Latinos and other older adults of color, very much so being impacted with hospitalizations, cases, and death in relation to COVID-19. So as such, with this research as service, we knew that for a minute we have to just really take a moment and take stock of where we are to serve older Latinos and other community members. So along with Allison here and Ken Hepburn and Emery, there were informational letters developed. We took that template and we made it our own. So it was especially geared towards caregivers. So say what to do for your own health, but what is COVID, how to reduce your risk, specifically focused on multi-generational homes. So where you have a grandparent, a parent, and a child in a home together, people going out and about, rules of thumb, and most importantly, Chicagoland resources where people can have their clothes laundered or pick up food or get evidence-based material, cutting edge on COVID-19. And we had that in Spanish and English. We did old school snail mail to reach folks, email, as well as our newly launched social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, really trying to have wraparound services. But as Cerise mentioned earlier, around April, we all came to the realization that we're in it for the long haul, especially in Chicagoland. That's when we began partnering with some of the other departments and members at Rush to have town halls that address COVID-19 in Latino communities. Pedro Lara, one of our senior coordinators, really took the lead to have Spanish and English town halls with Meet the Docs. I provided that in terms of harm reduction or risk reduction to say, this is what you can do. We recorded these things. But through that, we heard from one of our staunch supporters, partners, the Mexican consulate, to say, can we partner with you guys to do a webinar on PPE? So people are open to PPE, we just don't know how to properly use PPE, particularly masks, okay? And then how will this work in multi-generational homes? So keeping distance when space may be limited, when to wear masks and washing hands, etc. So we were able to work with one of our nurses in a memory clinic at Rush, Spanish and English, and really demonstrated. And we learned a lesson the hard way with COVID is to record everything, and we didn't. So we have to record this webinar so we can keep having this here along with our PPE distribution and drives, okay? But one of the things that I really am proud of with our team, having that pivot with Research as Service, was flipping one of our annual activities, health and back to school fairs that we do every year in person. About 300 people come out. Obviously, that's not possible now, but we decided to partner with laundromats that are owned by Latinos, other persons of color, but particularly women, to say, how can we have a laundering day or a laundry health and wellness fair where we give information on ADRD, because issues do not stop simply because we're in a pandemic, information about the pandemic, distribute PPE that, say, myself or other staff have made, our donations received and purchased, and also resources for laundering. Because we know that being able to get clothes off, making sure essential workers who are family and friends of our older Latino participants is not only conducive to their health, but older Latinos' health, the folks that they live with, their loved ones. So we're still doing that. It's like a tour. I think we're on our 5th or 6th one. So it's very exciting. We may just keep it going. We'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted. But also during the partial pivot is that we have or as usual. So I would say around August, we really started getting excited about how can we do, say, curbside cafecitos? And our first one is next month, and we're doing it in the parking lot of a library that we always partner with. We'll have different stations where we talk not only about COVID-19, but ADRD and different relevant topics to healthy aging. So people can be in their cars or out and about. It's still kind of nice here in Chicago, so we can observe social distance, mask wearing, but still facilitate health equity through and related activities. We flipped our memory cafes to be virtual. This is a work in progress because we know the digital divide exists here, as well as just operating things. As you can see, I had a little snafu in the beginning, so we could imagine what others may go through, but we're coming along. And something we're very excited about is our continuing partnership with the Illinois chapter of AARP, Caminando Juntos, with the caregiving conference. So we're developing new materials. Something that we're very focused on during this time is the realization, or the mantra that we lead with, is that for older Latinos, you don't want to, it's okay to tailor existing things. That's what we have with the shareable and bilingual products. But now let's create things specifically for older Latinos. Just build it from the ground up there with the brain activity journal that participants really want to have, where you can color or journal or have different tips about healthy aging. And then we have our stress busters for caregivers. A lot of, once they saw the letters, the informational letters to say, can we have like tips that we can keep doing? How can we tackle our stress during this time? So we're building those materials from the ground up specifically to meet the requests and needs of older Latinos who participate in our research and their family members. So in closing, just the bottom 2 boxes here is that really looking through all of these efforts, and I know it was a lot here, and I'm open to questions or offline speaking, but all of this is to facilitate 2 things. Equity, so having those custom tools to eradicate disparities, but what folks in my field of social psych are referring to as health justice, fixing that system through developing materials, especially for groups, engaging with them and understanding individuals and groups so we can just knock this out the box. So thank you. I look forward to your questions later. All right, and thank you, Allison, NIA, REDC, and everyone who attended, because Zoom burnout is real, as Cerise said. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so should I go, or do we want to answer questions for you?
So
yeah.
What would you prefer? Do you want to do questions at the end or now? We do have time, so.
And you already have a couple of questions in the queue.
Yeah. There
So,
are
I don't know, whatever you prefer is fine.
There are a couple comments, Crystal. Let's see, Josh Grill wants to know, needing to talk with older Latino men, do you mean participants or participants' adult sons? Guessing the answer is both. Josh, you can certainly elaborate, but that seems to be kind of a common theme among some of the questions.
Yeah. I would say both, guys. So immediately, I know Dave and I are thinking about older Latino men just as participants. So with my HERD study, the Health Equity Through Aging Research and Discussion, we had all women who had agreed to brain donation and who spoke with us. We had some Latino men in the folks who said no to brain donation, but we quickly realized that even with qualitative work discussing decisions that have already been made, we just weren't tapping into that male, Latino male population. But then that's a little bit broader because we're looking to have more Latino men in Latino Core overall. And that means that we have to understand, both for older Latino women and men, the role and viewpoints of older children who are Latino men. So it's really a three-pronged approach, is just those who are participants, potential participants and community members, and their relatives who are men. Yeah. And we have some ideas, and just really looking at how to implement them now, especially during the age of COVID. But yeah, we have a few things like having focus groups exclusively for men. One participant indicated that his church, that actually my mother-in-law lives down the street from, have like a bikes and brains. So they are motorcyclists. And so you can have bikes for brains. So we were thinking about that kind of in the middle of the whirlwind that occurred around March. So I hope that answers your question, Josh. And thank you for asking.
We'll take one more question if somebody wants to unmute and just throw a question out to Crystal.
There is another question there in the QA, right above Josh.
Let me see.
There's one question, what measures are you using to measure disparity?
If I think I understand the question there, if we're talking about in terms of brain donation and brain tissue, it would be the sheer numbers of not being able to have the similar amounts of brain tissue among older Latinos to be able to meaningfully speak about what is going on in terms of ADRD and also other pathways while individuals are living. So that represents one in itself, its own disparity through our own work at Rush and also pretty well known in the literature. So that's one marker of that. The other piece that I would think of as disparity is simply not having as much information about. So it may not be say that things are different or groups are different per se, a common thought with disparity or imbalance, but really that we may not have as much information in order to understand one, older Latinos and the diversity and heterogeneity within in terms of ADRD, which taps into brain tissue, but also resilience, coping factors, etc. But then if we don't understand that or have enough data for that clear understanding, how then can we meaningfully compare them to any other group? So I see it vacillating with three levels of disparities, with just saying a dearth of information, that kind of lockstep with lower numbers of brain donation agreement, and then completion, and then that speaks to how can we understand within group, and then without a doubt, how do we even compare? And so that is really informed from health disparity framework, a minority health framework is what it's called. But I'm more than happy to talk more about that or share resources that I really tap into through this work.
Great.
This is Marilyn Miller from NIA. Can you tell me, in your Hispanic core, are they consented for genetic studies?
So with the Latino Core, they do agree to being contacted for other research studies. So if they choose to, yes, they can. And I do know that at Rush, the Rush ADC, we're partnering with Brazil to have an admixture genetic study to understand ancestry there and genetics and such. So yes, they can participate.
Okay, so I'll be in contact with you and probably some folks from our genetics consortium.
That'll be great. And we can put you in contact with Dave Marquez especially as well. Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I think we should move on. Dr. Quiroz, take it away. We're very eager to hear the work that you're doing.
So thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to present and share the experience. Pretty much, I wanted to share what we have been doing in Boston to recruit and engage the Latinos, particularly based on the cultural approach. So my name is Yakeel Quiroz, an associate professor at Mass General, and as I'm going to show in the next slide. So the acknowledgments, that is kind of like, so you know where I'm getting all this information from. So I'm the director of the Multicultural Alzheimer's Prevention Program at Mass General, and the co-founder of the Multicultural Neuropsychology Program to do a cognitive assessment. So Latinos who are Spanish-speaking patients. So, and the co-chair, as was mentioned before, of the Latino ADC Special Interest Group. I'm very active in with the Hispanic Neuroscience Society, and the past chair, immediate past chair of the Diversity and Disparities PIA of ISTART. And of course, I'm a member of the RECRUITMENT in Massachusetts and the Massachusetts ADRC. And everything that is putting together and is working now as part of these efforts to recruit Latinos in Boston, of course, is a team effort that is part of, like you will see through the different slides, the people that have been involved. But I wanted to thank in particular Dr. Risa Sperling and Dr. Doreen Renz for their support and encouragement to actually develop the Latino program here, and all the other mentors who have contributed to this. So pretty much we started with a culture, as you were saying before, so it's the multicultural programs pretty much that right now we have with an effort to prevent Alzheimer's disease. And the main the emphasis is through culture. So one thing that is clear, it's like, why should we actually take culture into account? Especially when we're trying to recruit diverse participants. And of course, today the focus is gonna be in Latinos because I'm not Latina myself, but you could also use many of these principles to recruit other diverse participants, because culture is culture can be applied to any group actually. So you may know this too, but just to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So culture, when we're talking about culture, we are talking about a set of learned traditions and living styles that are shared by members of a society, and that's kind of like a very old definition. But I like it mainly because it has 3 dimensions of culture. That one is like, it goes with everything that is internal, meaning like your individual subjective experience of culture that impacts your way of thinking, feeling, knowledge, your values, your attitudes, and your beliefs. And also it has a behavioral dimension that pretty much goes with the way that you behave and you relate to others. And as you know, like behavior is in everything that we do, from our interest and desire to participate in any research to actually our interest to be engaged or any kind of activity. And of course, there are a series of cultural elements that usually represent one culture, like symbolic elements or clothes or ornaments, instruments, music, anything that can tell us about the different culture. So what we know is, like, usually when we are thinking about culture, we tend to think about the surface culture. What is here is pretty much we are thinking about the food, the festival, the holiday, the performance, like everything that we see. But when we are actually really going deeper into culture, it's way more complex and comprehensive than that. And that's pretty much the approach that we have been taking for this work, trying to understand the Latino culture, the deeper we can to better engage and recruit participants from these communities. So Crystal already talked about this, but just to remind you, so why should we actually care about recruiting minorities in research? One of the main reasons is because we want to have research that is important and relevant for a diverse population. So that's one of the main motivations that we have. Also, something that is very interesting is that the US demographics, as you probably already know, is very diverse, and the cultural diversity comes also with greater linguistic diversity. And some results from 2015 actually shows that 21% of individuals that fill out the survey, they speak other language than English at home. Also, out of those languages, Spanish is by far the most prevalent, and followed by Chinese and French. And we will see now with the new census how that changed. The other thing that is very important here in the US, the Spanish speakers are actually the 3rd largest Latino population in the world. And we have, by numbers, more Spanish speaking individuals than Spain. So thinking about culture, and this is also something that Crystal mentioned, we have been actually paying a lot of attention to cultural competence. And it's like, what do we have, what do we need to actually become culturally competent, to actually be able to work with individuals that are from a diverse background, and particularly in this case, to work with individuals that are Latinos. For those of you that haven't heard about this before, so cultural competence have some 4 key elements. The first one is to actually be aware of your own assumptions, how your values, your bias, everything that you're thinking can actually play a role in how you relate and what you think about others that are not from your own group. And also, like, what do you need to do if you are not ready yet to actually get closer to this position or this attitude to be more multicultural. So that's kind of like something that we started implementing from the beginning. Then we also have, like, you need to know, to have some knowledge and understanding about how you see the world and how your participants actually see the world. And related to something that Crystal mentioned before, one of the best ways to do this actually is to have a conversation with individuals from different cultures and learn from them. And I had to say like this, and I am originally from Colombia, and in the time that I had been working with the Latino community in Boston, I had learned more about the Latino culture than in my whole life. And I even, like, my Spanish skills have wider because I had learned Spanish too, different Spanish words that I was not used to use when I was in Colombia. So it's part of like a knowing, pretty much getting to know the people that you're going to be working with, even if you are from a similar culture, like myself, for instance. So we have like, then after you have that, you pretty much determine what are the skills that you need to actually be effective at working with the ethnic minority groups, or in this case in particular, with Latinos. And then once you have that, so you develop the core cultural competence that involves like everything that you do in the practice. In our case in particularly, as I'm gonna be talking later, I have been trying to integrate all the efforts that we do with the community with clinical services and research. So it's a combination. So it's trying to extend the cultural competencies to all the different aspects of care and research. So when can we start? And this is something that I, like a very common question that I get, especially if you haven't started doing this. So one of the things is like, be mindful of how you practice your center whenever you are attending or getting people, particularly if you're attending people in person or even like using Zoom or anything, and how that actually welcome ethnic minorities. You know, like the first impressions are always important, but something to think about is they, like, you know, is your center actually has images of people that are diverse, or you only have posters with white people? Do you have anti-discrimination statements, for instance? And this is something that is even more relevant after everything that has happened with the Black Lives Matter in the past few months. Do you have anything in your center that actually invite people to think about getting engaged, for instance? So other aspects to consider is like the same, is your facility something that is accessible for people that are diverse background, in particular those that cannot afford taking a private transportation and they need to just go in public transportation. Then the other component is the waiting area, especially if you are working in person. Is the waiting area a welcoming place for ethnic and linguistic minorities, for instance? Like you have the signs or the magazines in different languages, or it's only in English? Like something that I have been very careful about it in the clinics, like before COVID. We used to have like magazines, for instance, in Spanish for the ones that were coming to the clinic. And we have a special section in the waiting area where all the materials were in Spanish as well. Now everything is gone because of COVID, but it was there before. So as Crystal mentioned too before, so the Latino community or the Latino population or Hispanic population in the US is very diverse. So that's something that we need to take into account, as I mentioned before, even if you are from the Latino, like a Latino, from the Latino background, that doesn't mean that you understand everything about Latinos. And there are several ways to go about how you talk to the Latinos, how you engage to these communities. And there are so many different terms that are used. These are some of them, including Latino, Latina. The other one that is not there is Latinx. And for those that are interested in having a more, like a closer discussion on these terms, we're actually hosting a panel discussion on October 9th to just talk about like the terms, Latino, Latina, Latine, Latino, Latinx, all the different possibilities, and just have a conversation, at least a first conversation about what are the best terms to use. So these are some of the characteristics that you may know, but I think that it's important to mention because this is pretty much what the framework for how we approach the community. And like some characteristics of the Latino culture in general, at least here in Massachusetts, many of them are actually from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. They also may think about disease as something that is more emotional at some point, magical or folk defined. There are some particulars about eye contact, for instance, nodding, which is something that is very interesting. Nodding may mean that one person is listening, but not necessarily that he or she agrees with what you're saying. So that's something that you see in the clinic very often. You say something to the patient and the patient knows, like, okay, so pretty much make sure that the patient actually understands and just ask them to say back if they want to do it or not. So pretty much get some kind of like conversation going to make sure that they actually understanding and they agree what they are supposed to be doing particularly. Also some roles of the family, like the mother is very important in making the decisions to see the doctor. In general, something that I highlighted here because it's something that we use a lot is the trust or the confianza that is so important to establish any kind of a rapport or engagement with the community. So that's something that my group has been working really hard for the past several years, trying to get the community trust, and something that takes time, doesn't happen overnight, but the constant presence actually makes a huge difference, and that's something that it pays off at the end. So the other value that is there is the thinking about the present. So Latinos are more tend more to think about the present time, and that's something that is the same. We need to work with them, especially if we're thinking about prevention, for instance. It takes like a lot of time for them to actually get into that conversation. It's gonna go here. The other thing that is, you probably know too, but it's the same, like the two things that I highlighted in this slide, something that we use a lot. The Latinos tend to be highly group oriented. So for instance, when we're doing activities with the community, we try to engage groups instead of just individuals, because it's more, somehow I think that it's more effective. Also, we are a little bit more flexible with the time, because as you may know, so the Latinos in general, they may have a more relaxed concept of time. So, and the same because people are more important than the schedules, if you want to say it that way. Also, when working with older individuals, especially older patients, it's very important, and it's part of the respect that I'm going to be showing in the next slide, that we address the older individuals with respect. So like, it's very unusual that you call an older Latino by their first name. We usually call them Don or Doña or Señor or Señora, but it's very uncommon that you just name them from the first name. So, and that's something that it makes a huge difference, and also help with establishing that first connection. So something that was mentioned before, I mention it again because it's key, is the value of family. So family, this goes to extended family, the cousins or the cousins and the cousins and the cousins, because the more important thing is that the sense of family, having a family is an important key of the Latino community, and it's something that we use a lot to engage. And as I was saying, like, this is something that you are not just doing for yourself. This is something that you are doing for your children. This is something that you are doing for your grandchildren and even your great-grandchildren. Just think about like how impactful this can be for your entire family if you actually participate in this kind of research. So like I put it in the context of the family and how important in this case participation is for the family, that makes a huge difference. Also like the sense of collaboration or cooperativeness among the different members of the family. Something that I'm going to briefly mention later. It's like we recently started a program that is called Youth Ambassadors Program, and it's with high school students. So the high school students are now helping us to develop materials, like educational materials for the older community and for their teachers, their parents, and so far. So like even the other way around, it also works. Kind of like we're going to work together. You know, this is very important for your grandparents. This is very important for your parents, your teachers. This is something that is going to change and make a huge difference in your community. So respeto, as I mentioned before, is key. And I think that especially when you're working with the older individuals, that feeling of respect is very important there. Latinos, as I mentioned here, so they tend to focus more on the relationships. And as I mentioned, that goes with the trust, and that takes time, but once you are able to establish that connection, that relationship, I think that they work really well with you, as particular for us, for instance. So the other thing that we have to consider is like, yeah, so, you know, we also have to think about the bilinguals. And the point with the bilinguals is kind of like, and I'm going to mention in a minute as well, it's like not everybody is monolingual Spanish speaking, right? And I think that especially as we move in the future, we're going to have more and more older bilingual individuals that are going to be also key to try to understand how the bilingual brain, how the bilingual mind, how somebody with like different cultures actually work. And this is something that we are also including the acculturation. So when working with the older Latinos or the Latinos in general, we are always watching for the acculturation. It's not the same people that just came here when they were older and they only go with the Spanish-speaking community, they only go to a Spanish-speaking grocery store and so far, but that those that actually are more immersed into the American culture. So like the same, like be aware of these kind of like factors and how that can help you to engage and connect with different communities, even among the Latinos. So all of that is kind of like the background of what we have, pretty much like the framework that we use in our group. And the program that I direct is the Multicultural Alzheimer's Prevention Program, that is our MAP, that is connected with the Massachusetts ADRC, and also with the Harvard Aging Brain Study and other programs at Massachusetts General Hospital. And this is kind of like the model that I was mentioning before. So we start here on the right, that is the community engagement, right? We're starting with the community, getting the community educated, so the community know what we are doing. This should be actually to side error. Is the clinical care. They are sent to the multicultural neuropsych testing assessment. The center that we have that is now specialized in assessment of Spanish-speaking individuals, but they know that they can get services if they need it or if their family need it. Then we also move to clinical research, for instance, like we are trying to understand, as I mentioned, very interested in understanding the bilingual Latinos as they develop MCI and dementia. So that's something like once the patients, for instance, are referred, or once we get patients in the community that are bilingual in this case, we are trying to enter into this study that is the clinical research. And as part of the efforts to increase opportunities for Spanish-speaking older Latinos, 2 years ago, we actually launched these two programs, the Boston Latino Aging Study, that is a prevention registry. We started like pretty much screening, doing free memory screenings of all the older Latinos that were interested in our work. And we entered these individuals into a registry. And the registry has now more than 200 people, and the same is still working. This is still new, relatively new, but we have more than 200. And then we receive a supplement to do a pilot study with some of them to see if they were willing to do some biomarker research. So this is what we call now the Latino Harvard Aging Brain Study, or Latino HABS. That is a pilot study with few individuals that pretty much just to see if the Latinos were willing to participate in this research. Based on all this data that we have, we also submitted a grant to NIA to see if we could get biomarkers in the ones that are part of the Latino Aging Registry that were not eligible for the HABs. So they're saying like they can see the whole thing and they can also participate in whatever of these different circles. So the other thing that we do, and I think that it has been really effective, is that we actually offer training opportunities for them. So one that has been very successful is this one that is improving your memory and attention. And this year we didn't offer it because of COVID. But last year we offered a 4-week course to train in memory skills, and then another one to train in attention skills. And these were open to anybody that were older than 50 years. And they went through a screening that it was pretty much the TICs, and based on the TICs score, they were placed in a different level of, for instance, the ones that have like MCI, or the ones that require more supervision, and they were placed in a different group. So we had different groups depending on their level or cognition, if you want to put it that way. But the same, at least in the communities, they are actually learning something that is useful for them, even if they have or no risks for Alzheimer's disease. Anybody can actually improve their memory and their attention skills. So they see the benefit or actually being closer to us. So then we have established some community partnerships that it has been like really amazing to see. So we have some partnership with the radio, the Latino radio, and the TV radio as well. So we also have partnerships with the different consulates of Latin America that are in Boston. So we have different presentations with them. We are pretty much very aligned with all the activities that the Alzheimer's Association is doing in Massachusetts as well. So we go to their activities and events. And something that I want to share here is like we're starting the Research Ambassadors Program. And it's only 2 minutes. I'm going to show you a video of one of them. It's in Spanish, so I apologize for the ones that don't speak Spanish, but I just wanted to show you how, even if you don't understand what they're saying, you can see the reaction. Give me a minute. Can you see the video?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay.
El estudio que estamos realizando ahora es para tratar de entender cómo la memoria y los problemas de memoria aparecen con el envejecimiento.
Y eso me pareció interesante, me pareció una contribución a la ciencia y una contribución a la humanidad. Pues. Si otros hacen lo mismo que yo, se va a acumular una información que va a ser útil para los científicos.
Es importante que los latinos participen en estos estudios porque queremos obtener información que sea relevante a nuestra comunidad, específicamente información que podamos comparar con personas como nosotros.
Los latinos, de hecho, tienen casi el doble de riesgo de los que no son latinos de desarrollar enfermedad de Alzheimer. Queremos entender cómo los problemas de memoria aparecen o no aparecen con la edad.
Bueno, tengo 1 año en el estudio, este va a ser mi 2.º año. He dicho antes, me he sentido atendido, apoyado. O sea que cuando vengo aquí, yo siento que no estoy solo en la participación.
Tenemos lo que son pruebas cognitivas, que es básicamente para saber cómo está la memoria, cómo está la atención, cómo están las funciones cognitivas, las funciones de pensamiento.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, y para poder recibir los beneficios de la ciencia y de los avances de la ciencia tienen que conocernos.
Oops. What happened? Okay, technical difficulties. I was almost done. The point that I wanted to make is like like having the participants actually is talking about their own experience in research, what they have learned. But most important than that, I don't know if you get it from his talk, it was pretty much like he feels like at home. He feels, you know, he feels like this is a place that you want to come. You know, this is nice people. You know, like you are actually helping them. They need your help. It's so clear. You know, like I had to say, like nobody told him anything. We pretty much just asking a question, like just say whatever you want to say, and it was like, no, it's perfect because that's exactly what gets to in particular the Latino community. It's like we are doing something for the community. We are trying to make change for the community. And we want you to be part of that change, pretty much. So I think that he did a great job and he's amazing. So I just wanted to share a brief click with you. So moving forward, so now in the next couple of minutes, I wanted to tell you about like how we have actually changed or adapted to connecting in the time of COVID-19. And as Crystal mentioned before, so of course, like all the activities somehow were interrupted and our activities got interrupted too. But I wanted to show you some of that. So first, we kept a meeting in Zoom, and this is like pretty much the people in the map, but I chose this picture for the following reason. That is what I mentioned before, the two high school students that are here. The younger ones are the high school students. And pretty much we use the opportunity to involve people from the community to help us kind of like give us our insights about how to improve our recruitment and connections with the community as well. And now that's formalized as the Youth Ambassadors Program. So instead of these two, now we have 7 high school students that are working together as part of this program. So we also found a Facebook Live, which is kind of like a really good tool. And as part of this partnership that we have with the different consulates, we hosted a few events talking about Alzheimer's and how to protect your memory. So this is one that I did, and that have over 3,000 people joining in when we were doing the talk from all around the world. So we also have one with Mexico, with the Mexican consulate as well, with Ana Paola Garza and Marta, that are from Mexico. They are part of my team. They were also doing the work in Mexico, in the Mexican consulate. And then we started like using Facebook and the local media, as I was mentioned before, through this partnership, we kept a presence there. So like we were in Facebook, we give interviews, we were sending notes and articles to the newspaper, and we kept in communication with the community leaders like this guy, that is Alex Garcia, and has helped us a lot to connect with the community. So we use that as well. And we created a space to talk about all these issues that were happening around how to become anti-racist, for instance. And it was very clear that we were sending these messages in the community that we were anti-racist and that we were actually a place that welcomed diversity in general. So once we had the chance to go back, so we were the first ones. I was very proud. We were the first ones to go back to the clinic. And one of the reasons why we were the first ones is because as part of all the telehealth services that were offered, so the Latino community here in Boston was very affected because many of them, they don't have access to technology. So once we opened and once we got the green light to go back, as you can say, so pretty much the Latino clinic opened its doors. And I took this picture, not just because we were very proud to come back, but also to show how the bicultural the staff is. And that's something like I'm super proud because pretty much everybody that works with me is bicultural, bilingual in Spanish or in other languages like Portuguese and others. So pretty much like as you are intentional about recruiting bilingual people, you can actually get them. And the other thing that I did recently, this was last week, I tried to have a conversation with the community about the impact of COVID in general, particularly in their well-being and memory. And that's part of what we have been doing in the past few months, that we created a study that you probably had heard me talk about before, that is an online survey to understand the impact of COVID-19 on the well-being and memory of individuals older than 55. So we started in the US and we extended to Latin America. We have now over 2,000 individuals that have completed this survey, and we increased the sample now to 3,000 just to give the opportunity to more people to participate. Thanks to some collaborations that we have in Brazil, so the survey is now available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese too. So this is the email for more information, but the same, like, you probably have seen this as well. So it's the flyer just explaining like how important this is and how they can get involved with us. So these are the specific links, as I mentioned, so in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And that's pretty much everything that I have to share with you today. Thank you very much, and I take any questions.
Thank you so much, Yakeel and Crystal. I really appreciate your generous offerings. They're both just both these talks are just so inspiring. And we have 10 minutes. I think I don't know if you have a preference, but maybe people just can unmute themselves and ask questions. And I'll look at the chat and see if something comes up.
This is Marilyn Miller again. I have the same question for Yakeel as I had for Crystal. Are you consented for genetics?
So the ones that are part of the Harvard Aging Brain study, yes, they consented for genetics.
Oh, okay.
It's the same protocol that everybody followed for the HAPS study.
Are you going to have COVID data on those subjects?
We don't have COVID data on those subjects, no. In the ones that are part of the HAPS, no, we don't have.
So how are you tracking your COVID subjects? Do you have people on the ground doing the interviews, or is it telephone?
The survey is online.
Online.
So it's online, and there are some questions about if they have been COVID positive or no, if somebody in the family has been COVID positive or no. So we get some information from there, and it's self-reported, so it's pretty much based on what they reported online. If they don't have access to internet or anything, so we call them and we help them to answer the questions over the phone. But those individuals is only the survey, so the ones that have COVID, so meaning we don't have any genetics on them.
Okay, well, we may need to get back in touch with you because NIA is involved in a pretty big effort for COVID, so I will probably email you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Allison. People have
My apologies.
They have to raise their hands.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm so sorry.
And people can't unmute themselves as attendees. So if
right.
a question answered, you can raise your hand and I'll find you and unmute you.
Thank you, Cerise. And my apologies. I didn't realize you could unmute yourself. So thanks, Cerise. While we're waiting, David Marquez asked Dr. Quiroz, do you find that older Latinos are willing to come in for testing? Many of ours are too worried to come in and we have not begun going into their homes yet.
Yes, they are coming. So, yes. So we have cancellations here and there, but like for instance, in the clinic, that will be open first for them. So I used to see only one patient per week. And now we are seeing 3 or 4 per week, just to try to accommodate all the ones that were not being able to make it during the COVID stay home. So, and yes, they are coming. So that's a lot of testing. They're coming.
And Dr. Parker asked, did you hire a new Latino staff independent of the research center or clinic to help with the recruitment? Did your coordinators or professionals leverage personal contacts to get you in touch with the Mexican consul?
Let me read that one again. I think that I missed the beginning.
Yeah.
You hire a new Latino staff independent research center or clinic to help with the recruitment. So yeah, so pretty much like so as I mentioned at the beginning, we are trying to connect the clinic and the research. So like for instance, some of the research assistants that help me in the research, and they are the ones doing all the testing in the research, they are also helping with the testing of the patients in the clinic. You know, so they also see the patients there and they also see the research participants. So we're trying to integrate. So it's not like a one is not related to the other one. So I try to recruit everybody as part of the Latino efforts that we have, as I was saying, like now under the umbrella of the Multicultural Alzheimer's Prevention Program, but knowing that the Multicultural Alzheimer's Prevention Program is pretty much part of the ADRC and is pretty much part of the Department of Neurology and Psychiatry. So it's kind of like as part of MGH. And as I was mentioned, like all the ones that we have, it's kind of like once you have a few participants, a few staff that are bilingual and bicultural, that, I don't know, in my experience, it's kind of like a magnet to attract more people. So, you know, as I was saying, like even with the high school students, we only had 2 in the summer. Now we have 7, and, it's kind of like, and all of them are bilingual, bicultural. So it's pretty much like, yeah.
Cerise, do we have any hands raised?
We do, but I don't think I have the permission to unmute them. But David Johnson has a question, and Patrick Johansson has a question, and Andre Denny has a question. So
Elizabeth, can you help us out? Well, while we're figuring this out, David Johnson asked, can you talk briefly about if you use in-house or subcontractor for your PR and social media outreach? And I think that question actually can apply to both of you.
Crystal, you want to answer that first?
Sure. For us, I think about 18 months ago, we hired our own communications and marketing specialist just for the REDC, because we recognized that there were a lot of findings, of course, coming out, but also it's a new way to reach, particularly for older Latinos and older African Americans, their family members, so people who help them make decisions and bounce things off of social media. But we did have to partner with Rush's overall public relations group in order to say what could be said, what shouldn't be said, the platforms we could use, which is only Facebook and Twitter. But we found that we've gotten our groove to where now that the Rush side, the overarching, has left us at the RADC a tad bit more autonomous, and that we can make those decisions. So we do it in-house now largely, but that person is under the purview of OR. So they really partner with our bilingual staff in outreach, recruitment, engagement, as well as the study staff with Latino Core. So it's a nice kind of trifecta there.
Great, thank you, Crystal.
And in our case, it's like most of the partnerships that we have with the media is pretty much like they do it, how do you say, in kind, pretty much, so we don't have to pay for that. The video that I showed, that I will be happy to share the link since you missed the end. But for that video, for instance, we actually we pay for that video as part of like a campaign that we did at the beginning of the registry. But the newspaper that did it for us gave us like a huge discount, pretty much kind of like a symbolic, if you want to put it away. So we pay, but they actually give us a really good discount as part of that partnership.
Thank you.
Ken Hepburn types, Emory, we're hearing from the street that members of the African American community are maybe reluctant to be vaccinated once a COVID vaccine is approved. What might the receptivity to the vaccination be in the Latinx community?
So we just had a meeting about that this week because we are going to start some trials here at Mass General. And so I think that part of that trust with the community, like and I mentioned that is so important. It was very clear in this meeting that we had that pretty much like So the ones that are recognized already in the community as people that are trustworthy are the ones that are going to be connecting with the community to invite them to be vaccinated. So pretty much like it's not like some random people telling you that this is important. This is like, for instance, Dr. Quiroz that they know already telling you that you should do it because it's important. So they are kind of like, we are already working on how to approach them to do that. But yeah, we still haven't approached them. So we will see.
Thank you. And we are at the end of our time. Boy, this has just been very, very helpful, very interesting. And it's really kind of spoken to the ORCOR goals, steering core goals that we came up with at the beginning to support and foster communication across ORCORs, both here and at our webinars, and to expand research beyond the traditional and include be more inclusive in our work. So thank you both, and thank you everyone for your attendance. I look forward to seeing you on October 23rd for our next webinar, and we'd love your ideas about what you'd like to do next, and I hope and pray that we see you next fall in person. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.